Saving for retirement can feel daunting. The same goes for managing your money once you've stopped working. That's why we've created an 8-week newsletter series breaking down what you need to consider, both pre and post-retirement, into bite-sized chunks. If you sign up to our free retirement newsletters, for 8 weeks we'll send you an email full of expert guidance to help you take control of your retirement planning and give you the confidence to make smart decisions. We'll help you get to grips with your pension, teach you how to boost your income, and explain more about care options. It doesn't matter when you sign up either. Your 8 weeks of advice will start whenever you sign up. So what are you waiting for? Head to which.co.uk/retirement newsletters, all one word, to get up to speed on everything you need to know for retirement.
When life gives you questions, which get answers.
Hello and welcome to the Which Money Podcast, your weekly hit of money news and personal finance hacks to help make you better off. I'm James Rowe in for Lucia Ariano, and here's what's coming up this week.
I think we need to go in, check our accounts, see what we're getting, if we're getting anything at all. Again, we know lots of people have their money earning nothing as big banks. Again, very, very few of them have offered anything competitive in recent years. So, if you're getting anything at all or anything, I would say right now below 4%, definitely worth looking and moving your money.
Another way that you can keep on top of, changing rates and keep on top of multiple accounts as well is by thinking about signing up to what's called a savings platform. You have providers such as Raisin, Hargreaves, Lansdowne, and they can all help you source market-leading savings accounts.
This week, we're talking about savings rates. It goes without saying that the higher the rate on your savings account, the more interest you'll be making. But with the Bank of England base rate starting to come down, what does the market look like right now? Well, joining us to go into this in a bit more detail, we have Matthew Jenkin, a senior writer here at Which. Hello, Matthew. Welcome back.
Hi, how are you?
Very good, thanks. Nice to have you back on the podcast. And we've also got Andy Webb, the founder of Be Clever With Your Cash and the presenter of the Cash Chats podcast. Hello, Andy.
Hello, thanks for having me on the show again.
Yes, nice to have you back after a little while. Well, should we start with the Bank of England base rate? I mentioned that just in the intro there. This is kind of the barometer, really, isn't it, for how good saving rates can be. Isn't that right, Matthew?
Yeah, that's right. First of all, what is the base rate? When the Bank of England lends money to commercial banks, the banks have to pay interest, and that amount is determined by what's called the base rate. If the base rate rises or falls, lenders often pass those costs on to consumers. So in theory, an increase in the base rate means banks respond by hiking savings rates, and a fall results in savings interest being cut. I say in theory because sadly, a previous Which Money investigation found banks are far more likely to cut rates than raise them in response to base rate changes. Variable rate products such as instant access accounts are usually hit first. At the moment, we are seeing rates falling sort of across the board in response to a recent base rate cut. In fact, two recent ones, one in August and one in November.
So we had one in August, it started to come down there, and we had another one in November, is that right? So where are we now? Where was it sort of at the height, and kind of where are we now with that, Matthew?
Yeah, so the peak was it reached 5.25%, and it was coasting along for a bit at that rate, having gone from sort of rock bottom, a few years back. It's been steadily rising, hit that peak, and then in August it was cut to 5%, and then again on the 7th of November. It was cut from 5% to 4.75%. So it's coming down. The base rate is usually sort of voted on about 8 times a year by the Bank of England. The reason it's coming down now is because it's in response to falling inflation. You'll probably remember inflation was more than 11% at one point, but that's now dropped to 2.3%. unsurprisingly, we saw savings rates drop in response, as I said. I did a little mini investigation recently, which found that 1 in 5 instant access accounts slashed interest or pulled deals. Those deals were pulled altogether just 1 week after the announcement. So I think time is of the essence, really, if you're still trying to get those top rates towards sort of 5%.
Yeah, it's interesting you sort of mentioned that about how quickly banks are actually responding to base rate changes. Andy, can you sort of paint us a bit of a picture about this? How quickly are they actually reacting to these decisions?
Well, some of it is instantaneous because we've seen more and more some relatively big name providers like Chase and Chip and Tandem change from what's called a variable rate, which means the rate is variable, right? And it can change at any time, to what's called a tracker rate. And I'm not sure all customers are aware that change has happened for some of those accounts. And that tracker rate means that, let's say it's 1% below the Bank of England base rate. So when we saw that cut from 5% to 4.75%, that meant if you had a savings account with them, it would have dropped from 4% to 3.75%. And they have different rates that go on. So you need to obviously check this for your particular provider. So those ones happen straight away. Other ones, yeah, exactly what Matthew said there. Lots of them happened quite fast within that first week. They pulled them or they dropped. But it can happen at any time. We're still seeing changes now, rates being dropped, being cut for the first time. So it's a real mix from providers. But potentially as well, they're not necessarily responding to a rate cut. Sometimes they're changing their rate in anticipation of one. So although we've only had 2 base rate cuts this year, at one point we were expecting way more of these. Back in the start of 2024, we thought we'd have 3 or 4, maybe 5 of them happening this year. Hasn't happened that way, but rates were starting to sort of drop because that might be happening. They thought it would happen. And not just on fixed rate accounts, where it's more likely because they are thinking further ahead and predicting what the fixed rate is going to be based on what the Bank of England is going to do, based on what happens to inflation. But even some of those easy access accounts, they also were going, all right, with things that happen, let's reduce the rate there.
And obviously the market has been so fickle, hasn't it, over the last few years? Us as customers have kind of had the best of both worlds, haven't we, in a way, when, the base rate was just above 0 and then, in a very short space of time, it went way above 5%, didn't it? So it just shows in that short space of time just how reactive the markets, almost have to be, right, Andy?
Yeah, although when it was going up, they weren't increasing the rates anywhere near as fast or by as much as they are when they're cutting them now. They're much happier to reduce the rates and give us less money than they were to maybe give us a bit more. There is obviously an exception to this though, and sometimes some of these, particularly more the challenger banks or the digital ones, sometimes they do actually buck this trend because they've got some marketing spend they want to put behind it. So actually, we've seen this very recently on easy access cash ISAs. While everything else has been falling, they've been pushing up the rates, just 2 or 3 of them battling with each other to really go to the top of the tables. Now, again, it's still variable and get to a point where even they start to bring the rates down. But yeah, on the whole, very, very quick to cut. Maybe the odd exception might go the other way and push things up.
Yeah, I mean, is it the same for all banks? We talk about kind of the traditional high street banks, don't we? And then we've got the challenger banks who almost do exactly that, don't they? They try and challenge the high street stalwarts with better rates. When the base rate has been coming down recently in the last few months or so, were there any that kept good rates, Matthew?
Yes, but also I did find, so when I looked into it, I did a bit of a number crunching, that some of the deepest rates have actually come from the challenger banks. For example, former market leading providers such as Atom Bank and Shawbrook Bank, for example, they actually reduce rates on instant access accounts the most within the first week of that November base rate announcement. I found that they cut by 0.3 percentage points. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but I'll put it into perspective in a minute. Monmouthshire Building Society and the Post Office also made similar cuts. When you look at high street brands, of course, they were also quick to cut rates. Yorkshire Building Society, Cooperative Bank, they all reduced by 0.25 percentage points. Santander made a 0.2 percentage point rate cut on its equivalent product. But more worrying is when you look at the big 4 banks like Barclays, HSBC, Lloyds Bank and NatWest. I mean, their rates haven't even budged in a year. And when when I say like 0.2 percentage, but it doesn't sound like a lot, but over a year or more, the amount of money being lost in interest can really start to add up.
I do want to get into kind of what a rate cut looks like in real terms when you mention it gets cut by 0.3%. So can you give us an example where if a rate gets cut by a certain percentage, what it would actually look like in our accounts? Kind of how much are we almost losing out on when the rate comes down?
Let's say you you opened an instant access account with £5,000 at a rate of 5%. After a year, you'd get £250 in interest. However, let's say the rate drops to 4.7%. After 1 year, you'll earn £235 in interest. So it's a £15 difference. But the more money you have and the more money you put in, the bigger the loss. So it really depends how much savings you have, and of course, because the rate is variable, it can change at any time. Meaning, your losses could be even bigger if your bank decides to suddenly cut the rates.
It certainly starts to add up, doesn't it? Andy, are you surprised, just to sort of go back to this point about rates being cut, does it surprise you how quickly some banks respond? Or as you said before, they almost try and predict when the base rate might come down? Are you surprised at how quickly they do this?
No, I mean, not at all. They want to make money from us, don't they? So they'll do whatever they can to do that and reduce what they give us. I do think that it can get slightly sometimes a bit complicated for consumers when these things are changing, particularly when you've got a variable rate account. The easy access ones are all going to be variable, so they change, and they can change quite a lot. So sometimes you might be thinking, oh no, my rate just dropped. I need to move my money elsewhere. But then you move it somewhere else, and that one cuts its rate as well next time. So we can see where those kind of things, because they don't do it at the same time, that can be quite frustrating. You don't know whether they've already factored in the cut or not. I think how often you actually go through with the sort of moving your money maybe will depend a little bit on how much you have. So exactly Matthew's example right now, if you have a lot of money, then a small cut can make a big difference if you can find a better account out there which pays more. If you don't have much, then maybe it isn't worth it. We know a lot of people don't have huge amounts of savings, and maybe moving your money all the time, every time one of these cuts comes along, isn't worth it, because if it then gets cut again, because you don't know it's going to happen, then you're moving it again and you're moving it again and you're moving it again. That constant admin can be maybe more than it's worth, but larger sums, then absolutely it's worth thinking about it in that way.
Yeah, it's interesting you're talking about people who are then, looking at those rates and choosing to move. Are some of us as customers maybe a bit too complacent, or do we just not have our finger quite on the pulse enough to see the rate cut and think, okay, I better get moving? Is some of the onus actually on us?
Absolutely, it's on us. Matthew said it is really easy to shop around, and find what rates are available out there, but you need to do that. Because if you just, often, I'll get an email from doing the job I do, I've got loads of different bank accounts and savings accounts just because I write and review them all the time, or old accounts that I've had personally, I've moved away from, and say, we've got a brand new rate, here it is. And they'll sell it as something really exciting. And if you think, oh, okay, great, my bank's offering me this rate over here, that seems pretty good, but you don't know how it compares to the rest of the market, of course you might just stay put. So it is on you to look around and see what's out there. I think also a lot of people, though, they might not even be aware that the rates have changed. They might think they've got a good rate because it was when it happened, and don't quite necessarily understand on these variable rate ones, they do move. Unlike a fixed rate where it's locked in and you've got that for whatever set of period you're locked in, those variable rate ones are very, very likely to move. So yeah, I think we need to go in, check our accounts, see what we're getting, if we're getting anything at all. Again, we know lots of people have their money earning nothing as big banks. Again, very, very few of them have offered anything competitive in recent years. So, if you're getting anything at all or anything, I would say right now below 4%, definitely worth looking and moving your money.
Well, there's some solid advice for you. If you take one thing away from the podcast today, remember that stat around the 4% mark is one definitely to take away with you today. Well, after the break, we'll be carrying on this conversation around savings rates, but also exploring how else you could go about boosting your savings. We'll be back after this.
Hi, I'm Andy Webb.
And I'm Amelia Murray. We're the hosts of Cash Chats, the award-winning podcast from BeCleverWithYourCash.com.
Now, if you're enjoying listening to the Which Money podcast, then we know you'll love Cash Chats too, your go-to podcast to help you make the most of your money.
Each week, we share our top tips, secret hacks, and the latest deals so you can master your finances and keep more money in your pocket.
We're the only podcast that covers every single bank switching deal to help you make hundreds of pounds each year. Some of our listeners have made thousands.
We'll also tell you where to get the best best savings rates, how to beat TV streaming hikes, whether you should overpay on your mortgage, and much more.
And if you want to know where to buy a cheap bottle of Bailey's, bargain theatre tickets, or get the latest credit card welcome bonus, you'll be sure to find something in our deals of the week.
New episodes are out every Tuesday and Friday mornings on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all podcast apps. And you'll find us on YouTube too.
Just search Cash Chats Podcast and hit follow.
Welcome back to the show. Thanks as always for joining us. Now, all of this money news and discussion you're getting today is absolutely free. But if you'd like more personalised advice on a one-to-one basis, or perhaps you'd like to read the Which Money magazine, then now is a great time to snap up a Which Money membership. We've got a special deal for 25% off the usual price running right now. So whether you want to get it for yourself or gift it to somebody you know just in time for Christmas, then just head to which.co.uk/money gift to grab a year's Which Money membership for 25% off the usual price. You'll find that link too in the show notes. Now then, let's get back to savings rates. We've still got plenty to discuss, and one of the key rules for saving is that you want your rate to be beating inflation. Matthew, what can you tell us about this?
Yeah, so inflation, it's better to think of it as the rate at which prices are rising. It's come down a lot since it reached a peak a couple of years ago. So it's now at 2.3%. That's the CPI measure of inflation. Well, how does that relate to savings? Well, it's important to choose an account with a rate higher than the current CPI figure, because if the interest rate on your account is below inflation, your savings will effectively be losing value over time. We did a bit of, again, a bit of number crunching during the last inflation announcement last month. And we found that while there are slightly less deals that beat October's figure of 2.3%, there's still 91% of all products that offer rates above inflation. So, at the moment, I think we're still in a very sort of good position, and savers are still, getting some really good deals.
And Andy, I think over the last few years, especially when inflation really started to spike, we almost got a bit frightened of that word, didn't we? Because of kind of what it ended up doing to our savings accounts. Is there cause for concern at this point, or are we kind of in a bit more of a stable position?
Yeah, I don't think we should be too worried now about inflation going anywhere near back where it was, when we were seeing at double digits and everything so expensive. It's gone up more than there was originally anticipated recently. So that 2.3% now might be going up to closer to sort of 3% during next year. A lot of that is off the back of the budget and maybe uncertainty what's going on, what Trump might do in America and things like that. So we don't know where it's going to go, but it's not going to be like too far up. That's the current thinking, is it won't be going too big. So sticking around where we are right now, that kind of middle sort of 2.5%, between 2 and 3%, which still means, as Matthew said, there are going to be a huge number of accounts that beat this. Even if we see more cuts next year to the base rate and interest rates on savings accounts coming down, you should still be able to find that happy medium where we are beating that. And that is really important to make sure you are doing that.
Shall we chat about some of the best accounts and some of the best rates on the market right now then? Because I think that's kind of what people might be here for. Matthew, who is topping the list at the moment?
Yeah, it depends what type of account you're looking for, and that would depend on your own needs and circumstances. If you're looking for an instant access account, for example, one that's not going to limit how often you withdraw your money or put money in, then you can get a rate of up to 4.75%. That comes from a challenger bank called Kahoot. But the only catch with them is that the balances are you only get that interest on balances up to £3,000. So they're more for sort of smaller savers, really. But then if one thing that you should consider is locking your money away in a fixed rate account, and you can get even higher rates then, and it means you'll have even higher rates for longer, because as sort of rates on other accounts sort of fall, you'll have locked your money into that higher rate, and so when your account comes to mature, let's say next year, if you open a 1-year account, then you'll end up you'll have sort of ridden this storm, hopefully, of falling rates elsewhere. If you're looking for a 1-year fixed rate, you can get 4.8% with our Rhine Bank, and then a 5-year, you could lock your money away with a rate of 4.6%.
Don't forget as well, actually, some of the best accounts right now are in ISAs. Trading 212 has a 4.9% on its easy access ISA, which though it's had a recent cut down, it's still really good for you there. Plum has a limited access one at 5.18%. And again, these are variable, so they can change at any time. But you can take your money out of there up to 3 times and get that rate. If you're not using your ISA allowance for investing, then you can get a much, much better rate right now, which is unusual. Normally it's the other way around, and ISAs are lower than the normal easy access accounts, but it's certainly worth having a look at those as well.
And speaking of ISAs, I'm thinking now about lifetime ISAs. So locking up your money for obviously a lot longer, potentially. That's definitely something to be considering, isn't it? If you don't necessarily want that easy access to your cash.
Yeah, lifetime ISAs are interesting products. If you are buying your first home and you're under the age of 40, then they will give you a 25% bonus. You can save up to £4,000 in them in a year. If you do that, that's an extra grand you've got towards your deposit. But there are issues with that. So if you property price is more than 450k, which it could well be in London and the Southeast, then you can't use it. And that's a real thing that, I know Which has campaigned about this. We've talked about this quite a lot as well. It's something that really needs to change, because if you want to get your money out, there's going to be a penalty. Effectively, you're going to lose in about 6 or 7% of your cash. You lose the bonus and you lose that 6 or 7%. So your other alternative, if you don't want to do that, is to keep it until retirement, and then you can access it at 60, and you'll get that bonus plus the interest you've earned on it. But I would say that if you are thinking about a lifetime ISA for retirement, you don't want a cash lifetime ISA. You want a stocks and shares lifetime ISA, because over time you're hopefully going to get a much, much more substantial growth there than the interest rates that are in there. So lifetime ISA is definitely, if you're first time home buyer under the 40, house is under 450k. Have a look at them. The accounts that I really think people should worth having a look at are regular savers. I'm a big fan of these. People get a bit confused by them because they see these headline rates, and there are rates of 7%, if not 8% out there. And people think at the end of the year, they're going to get 7% on the total sum they put in there. And that isn't the case. You're getting, because you're only allowed to put in a certain amount of money every month. And it varies. Like, so the best one out there, from my opinion, is from First Direct, 7%. That is fixed. So you're guaranteed to get that 7% for a full year. The most you can put in is £300 every month. So you'll get in month 1, 7% on that £300. In month 2, you'll add another £300. You can add less, but let's say it's full £300. Well, then you're getting 7% for 2 months on that first lot. But then in the second month, you're only getting 7% for 1 month, and so on. So the last month you put the money in, you're only getting 7% on that last chunk for 1 month. So people get a bit confused with that, but you're still getting 7% on your money when you add it. So these are great ones to go for, I think. Sadly, a lot of them at those really high rates do require you to have a current account with that bank. So you need to sort of weigh up, and that's going to be a hard credit search when you do open that current account. So you've got to weigh up other applications, other things going on at the same time to go for those. But yeah, you're going to get the best rates from those accounts.
Yeah, a lot to consider, but clearly there's some really good rates out there. And I think one thing we've definitely learned over the last few minutes or so is that diversifying our savings could be the option, utilizing a few different options rather than just putting all of the cash into one place. Do you think that's a fair assessment, Matthew?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and one of the advantages of having an instant access account where you can dip into that pot anytime you like, and having a fixed rate account is that, as I mentioned, with fixed rate accounts, by locking your savings up for longer, then let's say lasting 1 year or or more, the best rate available now, it might not be around for when your 1 year bond matures. So if you if you lock your money away for 2 to 5 years, and you don't need to access your funds anytime soon, then it could leave you better off in the long run than if you fix for 12 months and have to settle for a much lower rate when it's time to reinvest the money. But obviously a lot of people might be a bit nervous about that, so having an instant access account or an ISA, as Andy pointed out, is a really good idea. So spread your money around, and make the most of all the options available to you. Another way that you can keep on top of changing rates and keep on top of multiple accounts as well is by thinking about signing up to what's called a savings platform. You have providers such as Raisin, Hargreaves, Lansdowne, and they can all help you source market leading savings accounts. They're pretty easy to do. Once you registered, you'll have just one set of login information to remember, and most platforms will contact you when bonds are due to mature to reduce the risk of your savings just languishing in a low paying account. So you'll get a reminder, so you can really if you do want to have multiple savings accounts on the go, then you're not going to forget and miss out on better rates elsewhere. The other thing I was going to mention actually when we were talking about cash ISAs is the other advantage of a cash ISA is not just the really good rates there are available at the moment, but it's also how much interest you can earn on normal savings accounts, because you will likely face a tax bill, especially if you've got quite a large amount of money in one of these top paying accounts. It depends on what rate of income tax you pay, but ISAs let you deposit up to £20,000 a year without paying any tax. So if you do have quite a big lump sum to invest, and you're thinking about multiple accounts, then you've got to watch out for that and be aware that you might end up having tax bill at the end of it, and maxing out your ISA allowance can really sort of help soften that blow, I guess. I don't know what you think, Andy.
Yeah, I think it's particularly the case when you talk about the fixed rate accounts as well, isn't it? Because if you are going for longer term ones, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, then you're getting the interest potentially all at the end, paid all at the end. It depends on the account. Some of them will let you take it out annually or even sooner than that. But if it's all at the end, that's when you're liable for your tax on it. So if you've got a lot of money and it's a long-term fix, then that could come through and be way higher than your personal savings allowance outside of an ISA. So if you have a fix in an ISA, a long-term fix in an ISA account, even if the rate is slightly lower, you're absolutely right, Matthew, it could be far more beneficial for you because all that interest is completely tax-free.
And finally then, I think it's worth coming back to the base rate purely because as this episode goes out, we are 6 days away from another decision from the Bank of England, just in time for Christmas as well. What do we think might happen? Andy, I'm going to throw this one to you first.
Well, one of the things when it comes to the base rate is you never really know. The amount of times I've covered this over the years and it's been nailed on for one thing to happen and the opposite has happened or nothing's happened at all. But at the moment it's looking more likely that we'll see no change in December. Going back just a month ago, and they were thinking it would be another cut, but now we're looking at no change in December and potentially 3 or 4 cuts in 2025. But as I say, take that with a pinch of salt because we get the inflation figures come out the day before that, and there could be a surprise there, and that could change things as well.
Matthew, what do you think? Are you agreeing, or are you disagreeing with Andy?
I mean, again, who knows? But yeah, the predictions certainly are that the base rate is not going to return to the very low levels recorded, over the last decade. But at the same time, I don't think we're going to see necessarily any more rises. But I mean, the Office for Budget Responsibility, for example, they forecasted the base rate is going to average 3.9% in 2025 and 2026. So it looks like it's going to there's going to be very little change for the next couple of years.
And Andy, you were one who was advocating earlier on for, doing some financial admin when the base rate changes. It would be quite helpful for it not to change right before Christmas, having to do some of that financial admin.
Well, do you know what? I mean, this is the kind of thing that people maybe put off because life's in the way and they're too busy and stuff's going on. And I don't know about you, but often at Christmas, you want to get away for a little bit, don't you? Just escape maybe from the family, or maybe you're off work for a bit more, so you can find half an hour. That's all it's going to take. Look at the Best Buy tables, see what rate's available, see if it beats what you've currently got. And it doesn't take much time to open them up and send that money across, at least on the digital platforms at least. So yeah, maybe this is the perfect time rate cut or not, perfect time to have a look at your savings.
That's a bit of motivation, at least anyway. If you saying it can take as little as half an hour, I think we've all got half an hour to spare, especially over Christmas when we're sort of twiddling our thumbs a little bit and might want to get away from some of the action of Christmas. Well, I think that's a perfect place to wrap up. We've covered so much, and there's plenty of little nuggets of advice in there. Andy, Matthew, thanks so much for coming on the show.
No problem.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, a huge thanks again to Matthew and Andy for coming on the show today, and to you for listening to this week's episode of the Which Money podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, then please do hit subscribe to make sure you catch our new episodes as soon as they drop. For daily money news and advice, you can find us on social media at Which Money and online at which.co.uk/money. And we also have a free money newsletter, which is delivered to your inbox every Monday. To sign up, visit which.co.uk/money newsletter. This episode of the Which Money podcast was produced and presented by me, James Rowe. If you like the Which Money podcast, you'll love our Christmas offer of 25% off a Which Money annual subscription. If you buy before the 8th of January 2025, you can get a whole year of our expert money guidance for just £36.75, down from £49, which works out at just over 10 pence a day. To buy this Which Money subscription for yourself or anyone else who'd find our money guidance helpful, go to which.co.uk/moneygift. That's which.co.uk/moneygift to get 25% off a Which Money annual subscription.